Hi, today we are going to design together a digital denture using Lucidon Digital Print. Let's select the teeth we want to restore, anatomy, artificial tooth, then Sirona library teeth, gingiva, monoblock, and here we match the material with the teeth. In this way, we're gonna have the right material settings. Then we select the type of scan settings, and we go for a digital impression. We now can decide if we want to leave teeth as single units or connect them as a bridge. I'm going to connect two segments and use a silhouette as connector type. Same for the other segment, bridge, connector bridge, silhouette. In this way, we have a separation between the two incisors and have probably a better aesthetic. Right click, import scan, and now we just have to follow what the software asks to us. Upper jaw, double click, open antagonist, and wax rim. Now we're ready to start the design. Right click, design. First step of our design is all about preparation. So we're gonna get the scans ready to start work on it. First step is refine scan. So we can select all to remove scan artifacts, close holes, and improve scan borders. We now can move next and do the same for the lower jaw. Is the antagonist, so if you want you can skip and go forward. It's not mandatory to do it, but we're gonna do it anyway. Okay, we now have two clean scan. You can see it's not too bad. Next step is occlusal alignment. Can be done in two ways. I'm gonna show you both of them. So, first one is set from the view. So I'm going to put this scan that face me and click set from the view. Then using the dots, I can just move it around and put it on position. You also got the blue dot to go up and down, or you can just drag it with a mouse. This is the first way. Second way is set with points. So it's one point on the back, one on the incisal papilla, and one on the other side. And now you can see this way is also very easy. When you're happy, you click next. When we have our oral scan, we always have to prepare the scan ready to work on, and the software will generate a model from it. So we can do two ways. We can do by click dot by dot, or we can select all. The software is going to try now to get as much information as possible. You always leave an edge, but if you want, you can just drag a line and extend it a little bit, because it's always better to have a bit more information than less, especially when we talk about denture, and sometimes kind of a bit too short. For this case specifically, I asked to have a bit more information on the flange, because the old denture had kind of like a small flange, and the patient not really like it. Now, all the area that is marked in green is what is gonna stay. If, for instance, you have opposite, so the green area is what you don't want to keep, you can always do inverse selection, and I'm going to show you. By doing so, you can invert selection. In case when you're gonna say like keep all, you're gonna have what you see now on the screen. You can just invert selection and you're ready to go. Now the software will apply borders and create a model. Okay, you can see now we have edges, and we are going to do the same for the lower. I'm just going to select keep all and click next. We're now ready for the last two steps for the preparation, which is the skull upper jaw. In this stage, we can modify the scan if we feel we want to maybe add a pause-dam in the back. Now, this is not the case, but I just can show you what you can do. So if you want, you can just like drag a line for the pause-dam, or you can like just use the smooth tool to remove some of these details or some imperfections, like for example here and there. But I'm going to undo everything because I want to start. I want to show you also a very nice tool, which is I found really helpful. Is remove artifact. Instead of go smoothing, I will rather use this tool because it doesn't modify the scan as much, and especially when we are going to touch the fit surface, we don't want to modify really the palette there. So using this remove artifact works really well. As you can see, it's magically make disappear all of the imperfection. And especially when you are like lots of mesh overlaid, a bit of like a drag scan, it's a very helpful tool that can help you to fix some of the problem. You can see here, for example, like we want to remove that hole, and it's gonna go. Very, very clever tool. Now, the scan is pretty much clean, so there's not much to do, to be honest. But we can click next. Lower, I'm not gonna do much, but also there is a nice tool which is a tool extraction. So if you need to do an extraction, this is the right time to do it. And then we can go next to the next stage. Now we're gonna have to select the occlusal plane through the wax rim, and now you can see this wax rim is actually not a wax rim, is the old denture scan overlaid the upper scan. And when I got a chance, I always ask the dentist to provide me this kind of information because as a dental technician, for me, it's gonna be a piece of cake to restore this job, especially because there was nothing wrong with this work. The lady just was complaining about the aesthetic of the teeth. The flange was a bit too short. She didn't like the cobalt chrome, but also if you see the neck of the incisor, they're really disbalanced. They're not symmetric at all. So we are going to improve this smile today. And having these aligned is just a bless. What the dentist has to do? Well, the first scan is going to scan with the prime scan. Is the dentures fitted? And to get as much information as possible, like palate, teeth, because then you can click on plus, add an extra scan, which is called, how is called on prime scan? Catalog, and then can scan the upper without the dentures. These two files can then be aligned on the software, and this is how it's gonna look like. Also, if this is the main scan, the lower, then when it's in occlusion, it's easier to get a right occlusion because we're gonna have the dentures fitted. So it's just like a win-win, I guess. However, if you don't have the walk stream or you don't have this kind of scan, you can import the working model twice. In this case, is the upper, because it's always going to ask you the walk stream, the partial module. It's kind of like the full denture module. It's exactly the same, essentially. So it's always going to ask for a walk stream. And if you don't have it, yeah, just import the upper twice or the lower twice. It's not going to make much difference. At this stage, we're going to do occlusal plane. So it's set with 3 dots. I start always from the left side, then I click on the middle, and then right side. Now we can drag around the occlusal plane, and also we can angle it with the red dots. When we're happy, we click next. Characteristic points, same like the full denture module, is exactly the same. But this time, you can see, ask me to select tuberosity, but I don't have any tuberosity here. I got actually teeth, so I'm just gonna place it there, incised papilla. And the second one, the second tuberosity is gonna go on the other side, on the tooth. It's not a big problem. Canine, well, we got the canines. I'm gonna click exactly on top of them. So now the software got the right coordinates, knows where the canine, so you know exactly the space we need for the 4 anteriors. And I can go next. So until now it's a bit like, it's kind of like the same stuff for every case. So it's a bit repetitive. But yeah, now we start to have fun because upper jaw boundary is when we start to design where we want our denture base. And it's definitely better than with the wax. With a couple of clicks, we can go all around, dot by dot. Be careful to don't click twice, otherwise it's gonna connect the spline together. And I usually go very quick, a little bit messy without care, and just to close the spline. Then I'm going slowly all around refine the spline in the way I want. We can right click and add point. We can right click, remove points. We can also decide to do it with a fast edit. So just by drawing the line, which is quite cool. But if I now get off from the fast edit, how you can see where I've been fast editing, it's the dots is kind of like, they're quite a lot. If you look on here, they're even overlaid. So this is kind of like make the software a little bit heavy. So my advice is, if you can, just use the dots. So you can be a little bit more accurate than me, and without going back and move all of the dots. So take like 10 seconds more. But then just move the dots. I think is you're gonna find it a bit beneficial in the long run. Things like this, when you see things dragged or the pink is not exactly under the white line, it means he needs a dot. So by adding a dot, it will fix the problem. See this corner here? one dot, and it's gone. A little tip. Now, in dental technology, I think we all know it's better to have more than add. And for this case, for my case, I usually kind of like overextend a little bit the flange or like get the undercuts a little bit more engaged, just because I prefer then to relieve that with a handpiece rather than then add material if I need to. Now you can see having the old dentures fitted is just perfect because now I can see how much I'm extending the flange. Here probably need another couple of dots just to make it look a little bit better. Yeah, I'm quite happy with it. But another advice, well, check always with antagonists because maybe, like in this case, the antagonist will touch the base. It's not really a nice thing. So if we can avoid that, is a good point. All the other area looks quite right. But don't worry, if you miss something at this stage, after the setup, we can review the boundaries. So if we want to move a few dots right and left, we can later. So let's not be too picky now and click next. Perfect, blocking out stage. Here, this is another important step because we don't want to incline this insertion direction too much. We always want to keep it quite square. And also you can see from the bottom this tricolor rainbow. If it's balanced, we're gonna see like a nice balanced color all the way around, which means it's quite square to the target. You can see it's pretty square. But if I try to incline it a little bit, which that was a mistake I was doing, I was inclining a bit too much, and somehow my denture wasn't fit really how it should. It was always a bit open on the back. It was caused by this B angle. Obviously, I wasn't understand what I was doing, or kind of I was thinking it was the right things to do. Change a bit the insertion direction, like kind of this way, to ease the undercut, but in reality, I was just complicating things. So my advice is keep it as the software recommend, and in case it's not centered 100%, you can incline it a little bit. You can see all of the undercuts are marked with a map color that you have it here on the right side, yellow, orange, red, and deep red. And yellow is not really a big problem. Sometimes I don't even like walks up. I don't even like put any block out on the yellow. But if you see something orangey, you probably have to. But in this case, for example, I probably, you see there is a hole there, but it doesn't mark it as as an undercut. But that's something that would probably interfere if you do a denture base like this without adding any wax there. So you got the blockout angle. In some cases, you can click none and it's not going to wax up, usually in edentulous cases. But you can also decide the blockout angle. I'm gonna go for 0 and click next. So now the software is going to apply automatically all of the wax in all of the map color. It's gonna cover completely any color present on the scan. I can show you now. You can see the wax now is appear on the right side. I can put in transparency or and well, that is wrong. That is a bit too much. If we design a denture with this blockout, I can promise you there will be no retention at all. So We get our wax knife, we click the minus, and here as well, if you leave the cursor on top, it tells you the shortcuts, the radius, for example, with shift and mouse wheel. I can see I can change the radius without go every time with the cursor to click there. Same things for the intensity that we're gonna use for removing or adding or smoothing. Here the shortcut is Control plus mouse wheel. You can see I can decide without going there the intensity I'm going to use now to remove the wax. And here I have pretty much to have to remove everything here on the flange because I don't want anything. I want a nice pressure on the gum with my denture base. So I'm going to get it free from all of the wax. Don't worry about the one that stays there, it's minimum. So you can smooth it off a little bit more. Now, let's have a look at the undercuts here. So you can see there is a slightly undercut, it's very small, so I don't feel like I have to add with the wax knife. So I can just smooth, and I show you, by just smoothing, it actually is adding a little bit of wax, and exactly what you need for these small undercuts. You can control it a bit better in this way with the smooth tool. Same for the other side. I want to remove a little bit as well. And here's what I'm gonna give it a nice smooth. Now, we need to worry about the teeth. First, I'm going to smooth all around just to blend all of the wax that have been applied automatically, which is a bit like, it doesn't look great. And now I can go in finesse and modify it. So, as I said, yellow is fine, it's a good color, it's not too bad. So what I'm going to do is unveil a little bit of the color. I can see it's nearly close to the gingiva, so it's not a big problem. Obviously, if it was a bigger undercut, you probably want to work a little bit more with the wax, but for this case, it's quite easy. Another things to take in consideration is like deep areas, like for example here, you can see as the oral scan are very accurate. Sometimes the little notch there, this deep area can create pain and discomfort. So I'm going to block them out. Pause them as well. For my experience with digital dentures, I don't think pause them are needed anymore. Uh, we achieve so much better retention now with all of the digitalization of prosthetics, 3D printers, milling machine, oral scan. So to be honest, in some of my cases, I had patients go back complaining for pain. So I decided to don't put any post-dam at all in, unless for some specific cases that the dentist require it, but I just add a little bit. For this reason, this old post-dam that you can see is pretty much like a big sulcus. I'm going to wax up a little bit there, just to make it heal a little bit with the new denture. So the new denture is not going to push there a lot like the old chrome. And now I feel I can go to the next step. Here we're going to decide the teeth. And we select Dentsply Sirona library teeth, but this doesn't mean we need to 100% choose that library, but I would recommend to use it because this HC library, which means highly characterized, are the best things I have seen in the last few years because they might look a little bit strange. I'm gonna just apply one random library because you can see the texture is a bit strange. The first time I used them, I wasn't really convinced, but after I print them, well, they are more translucent, but also the texture present on the teeth is absolutely beautiful. And it makes it looks more real. And thanks to the new IPN Premium as well, the translucency and the effect with all of the light, it's just like a very beautiful library. So how I pick the right library for this case? There is a PDF you can download from the Dentsply website with all of the mole charts, so you can see the HCG Newser and HC portraits. But I used to pick teeth, like stock teeth, based on dimension and obviously shape as well, but mostly it was about dimension. Now I don't really care about dimension because if you see this green dot, well, I can scale the teeth, so it doesn't matter anymore. What I focus on is the shape. So, for example, let's try the 60 balanced, see how it looks like. Maybe I like this more. Well, they're a little bit small compared to the old dentures, but to be honest, is for shape, I think they're matching a little bit better in this case. So, as I'm very lucky to have the old dentures online, I'm gonna start working on this case with this library. And the first step, which is the occlusal plane adjustment, I move all of the teeth at once as a block. So now I can just like have a play positioning. And that's what you have to be focused on this stage. So I'm just gonna work on position and dimension. Maybe shorten up a little bit the teeth, check it with the pre-op. And then when I'm happy with it, I can go and move to single individual setup. These other two are more for full cases, so I'm not going to show you that today. Let's focus on this case for now. And now I'm going to work individually. So let's focus on this lateral. And now you can see the dots make always the same function. The green is scaling the tooth in the direction you want to stretch it. And blue one is just moving up and down, and red always inclining. Then if you change view, you have the red, the yellow one as well, which make you do this work, which is very helpful because, for example, if I can see the margin is a little bit in here, so what I can do is, for example, angle it a little bit, go out, and then I can use this green, this yellow dots just to get out a little bit with the tooth, but without moving actually the neck. So it's not like the red one that you can see the neck is moving. So it's allow you to get the extra bit volume, I see, very helpful. So now it's kind of like centered. I'm quite pleased about the position. So let's start with the adjacent. Here I'm gonna do the same. And this is the reason why I always ask the clinician to scan the dentures fitted, because it's just like so much easier. And job like this, I'm very confident to go to skip trying and go straight to finish because I can really predict where I am. And that's the first step. So I just aligning to the old dentures, and now we can just improve it. It's a good starting point. This library match really well the previous one, and now I can focus on detail, and I can see there is a bit of a misalignment there, so we can improve it. Now, another nice tool is this symmetry design, but attention, it actually is brought here, attention, because sometimes I leave it on, I don't realize I'm working on one side of the mouth, and then I see that it's been, it actually is on. And it's basically every movement you do on one side is gonna happen on the positive. So it's really good if you control it because I can decide length and do movement at the same time, which is it's very handy, especially for symmetry and for the anterior teeth. But don't forget to untick it where you don't need it, otherwise it will put you in trouble. But worst case scenario, you can use always this magic option that you can go back in stage. Kind of like would like this button in life, unfortunately it's not possible, but on digital software you can go back and forward if you want, so no worry, you're not gonna lose your work. Now I don't want to put a bit too much pressure, especially on contact points there. I always prefer to have a bit of gingiva around that wrap the tooth because it's going to create a better socket. But don't worry about that. We can modify that later. So now it's more about position. But you can see I can go scale it a little bit lower, uh, a little bit less with the green dot, and then with the yellow, I can basically feel a little bit that gap without doing so. So very helpful to use the yellow dot as well. However, I think we're nearly there, so I'm just gonna work a little bit more with this lateral here, just because I don't want too much pressure. And a little bit of rotation, I'm very picky, but that's not too bad. Let's have a look, compare to the old job. So I can see I lengthen a little bit the incisors. Maybe I can do the same here with the lateral. And then also we can measure what we've done. So there is a measuring tape. You can go and target it. And you can also check how much we extend that, which is nearly 1 millimeter, 0.9. Very helpful tool. And now we're ready to go to the next step. The last things I want to share on this stage, well, if you really want, you can use individual morphing. So you can use dots to move around parts of the tooth. Um, Also, this can be scaled as well by clicking Shift and mouse wheel. And if you click Control, it make appear this arrow, which is with the help of the mouse, you can see you can stretch things. Very helpful, especially if you want to make the shape a bit more roundy. That's exactly what I do. I target the area and I make them a little bit more roundy. This can be done later as well, because we will be able then to review and check all of the morphology and the teeth. So focus on position on the stage and then click yes. This is just like a gingival line violation because I'm going through a little bit with the teeth through the gingiva, but it's not a big problem because the software will cut that automatically later. So now is probably one of the best parts. It's this module is called Gingivator, and basically we can decide the aesthetic of the gingiva. But before decide that, you can see I'm modifying a little bit the flange. So this is the step I was telling you earlier. So if there is something that you want to change about the denture base, that's the right time. Because it's always better than click back on on the previous step, because the software is going to have to recalculate everything again, so it's going to become a big mess. It takes quite time to do so. So leave it for now if you want to make some adjustment. Now, material settings, they're always set with base thickness at 2.5 for the upper, and I will stick with it because that is the material setting given from the material selection we decide on the order form, which is Lucidon Digital Print. I would not go below 2 millimeters. So for me, 2 millimeter is the minimum thickness I will I will lose. I will not go less than that. Now we got three different gingiva aesthetic. We got delicate, natural, and intense, and you can just select the one that you want, or you can go on custom setting and personalize every single part of the gingiva design. For example, interdental papilla length, the minute is set to 55%, so you can make it a little bit longer. And I would recommend to make it a bit longer because then you can sculpt it back and you can make it shorter. But if I select a very short length, then we will not be able to add with our adding tool. So I always, for convenience, go above 50%. 60, 65% sounds good. Depends also as well how long the teeth are. If they're very long, there is a big papilla, you might can extend a little bit more or not. Interdental papilla width as well. Here you can see you can modify the width as well if you want. Root eminence thickness, roof eminence height. I'm gonna put a little bit less for this case. Then you got gingiva margin thickness, and I like a nice margin thickness. That was bit, a little bit more is better. Gingiva margin grooves as well, if you like them. And then my favorite one is the edge shape profile. So this is really important because if you drag everything on the right, we're gonna have a more sharper edge on or edge profile. This will create more suction and it's really good, especially for lower cases. But bear in mind that after the print, if you're gonna start polishing and messing up with the border with your handpiece, well, all of the edge profile created in the design is gonna get destroyed. So just keep this in mind. I usually don't work too much on the border because they come already nice and smooth from the printer. But my ideal one is always in the middle. I really like the one in the middle, especially for the upper. So I'm gonna leave it like roughly that 0.50. And now I'm ready. I can run a preview and see how it looks like. And it's not too bad. We got a little bit of problems that usually happen quite a lot on the partial, but let's just ignore it for now. It's not a problem. We can get there. And just to have a bit of a peace for my eyes, I'm gonna remove it. I don't wanna see it, because otherwise I'm tempted to go straight on a school denture base and give it a smooth. But let's do step by step, just to have a nice smooth workflow. So the reason why I select silhouette during the order form, and I told you that is my favorite, is because I don't really have to go messing around with the connectors between the teeth. I can easily scale the dimension, so the facial scale at the minute is set to 80%, and I like to drop that to minimum, which is 70. Then you got lingual scale, I am going to do the same, which is 70 again. And then you got central scale, and I drop that to 60. Now we can go next. You can see we are working on this segment because you can see this gray arrow. Now we go on the next segment, and I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. 70, 70, 60. Yeah, that is the magic number. Next. Let's have a look all around. How you can see is not too bad, it's not too thick. It gives us like a nice space here for the gum. But also we can separate this with a disc later, so always think about what you're gonna do later on the bench after you printed the teeth. And I'm so much in love with this shape. Look at the texture, it's just beautiful. Okay, let's carry on with our design. So now we are on Sculpt Anatomy. So this is time now to check the occlusion, do adjustment if we need to. If we want to modify a little bit the shape of the teeth, we can, this is the right time. So you can add a little bit with the tweezers. You also can use the wax knife. If you want to, I don't know, but I put some fancy feature as well in the teeth. It's really entirely up to you. And especially in partial though, this is it's quite easy case, but in some cases you're gonna have to sculpt a little bit more just to blend the teeth that you picked for the specific case. So not always teeth are matching, unfortunately. But yeah, you can have a bit of a game, play around with the tools, and then you can cut occlusion as well. Contact is moving. You can decide the desired distance from the antagonist, and by clicking apply, you're just gonna apply to the bridges. Now at this stage, I can see there is we are a bit tight there, but let's run an articulation movements. Why not? So the articulator is on the right side here where I put my cursor. We are gonna center the articulator with our models. And I was at NRMAT 330, but there is a list of different articles, and I guess you can download more articles as well. And to run the movement, you need to use articulation for evaluate adapt design. So it's the icon on the right side. And here you have different options. So you can use the auto shut mode. You can prevent jaw from penetrating, or do not prevent jaw from penetrating. So I will probably not use this one. I'm gonna use the prevent jaw from penetrating, and I'm gonna run the movement. But it all depends what are you doing, and if it's upper or it's a lower, it's a full. So it's a nice tool. I like it. But the best part is come later. This is the best part because now I can adapt the design, and it's automatically adapted based on how much content I want to remove. I usually go around 0.20. But the cool things about 3Shape denture module, and this is more for a posterior teeth rather than anterior. When you adapt the design, it keep the morphology of the teeth. So it doesn't just cut the cuspid at 0, but it tries to keep that morphology. Obviously, if it's very aggressive, very deep bite, um, it's probably not going to keep the morphology, but in most of the cases it does. So it's a blessing. It's a really good feature because now I don't have to lose time, go there and review the areas. So let's have a look now. Let's reset the occlusion, and yeah, that's not too bad. There's not any contacts there. So pretty much we can go to the next step now. Sculpt denture base. Finally, we can fix the horrible mistake there. So here you got minimum thickness, where I usually turn it on off, which is set to 50. So it means this area that are just tiny below 250, probably 248, but still mark it. And then this is for non-millable areas, but thanks God we're not gonna mill these dentures. We're going to print them, so we don't care about parts that are not millable. So I'm gonna turn it off completely. Now it's the fun part. So it's all about sculpting, and I go quickly around, give it a nice move, just to blend things together. if you want to keep track on the thickness, you can click there, measure distance to preparation scan, and you're always going to see the thickness all around. You can see. Important, don't go below 2 mm. Obviously, in some cases, unfortunately, that is not possible, but it's very rare. Um, and now I'm gonna play around, sculpting a little bit this gingiva. Okay, you can see I put them quite high, but I can modify the papilla length. No big problem. But if it's too short, unfortunately, when you go adding, it's not gonna make you add there. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, here I want to wrap around the tooth. Unfortunately, we are a bit tight, but we can do something because we have to. I want to fix the area. So I go back on Sculpt Anatomy. I select the wax knife and I click on Sculpt on Protector Surface. So now I'm allowed to modify areas that go below this green line. And just with a couple of clicks, I can create a little bit more space for the denture base. And I'm going to do the same on this bridge here on the other side. Okay, be careful to don't remove too much, could create some problems. So now we can go back to the sculpt denture base and I can have a play there, add a bit of the material that I couldn't add earlier. Same on the other side. So I want to wrap around the tooth with the gingiva, with the denture base. So it's gonna, when we're going to do the coupling mechanism at the next stage, it's gonna create an eye socket. That will prevent our teeth to rotate. It's gonna be easier to find position. Let's have a look now with the, I can go a little bit higher there. You can see I put in transparency, I can see what's going on there if I was going through a bit too much. And with a bit of patience, you're gonna have a nice contact point with the denture base there. Now it's a little bit open. We can fix that with Sculpt Anatomy. I'm gonna get the tweezers. And I'm gonna create also a bit of contact point with the tooth. Not too much, but we know that we're gonna have to use a bit of contact paper there to relieve a bit that area. So not a big problem. Now we can go back on the Sculpt denture base and have fun. I can see this black triangle there. This is where I add the wax, so it's been blocked out. And we're nearly done. So another couple of things, but I really want to show you that part. Now, even if it's not perfect, it's just to show you the right way to socket the teeth. Now, if we want, we can recreate a bit of contour here that we lost. we really have play now. So if we want, we can add a bit of eminence. We can decide a little bit more. We can put like a Fresnel if you want. So it's entirely up to you how much time you want to spend on the denture base. I love to contour the denture base. It's one of my obsession. But let's move forward, otherwise it's gonna be stay here for hours. The last step, which is really, really important that we must to follow every time, is applying T-bars. These T-bars and bars have been placed specifically to support the denture base during the printing stages, but also during the curing stages on the dentures. So the way to apply them is during the gingiva skull denture base design, and is the third icon there is the attachment. And you can see we have the T-bar ready because we select Lucidon Digital Print. So this T-bars is being created for this workflow. Now you can use default orientation or view direction, for example. So if I put in view direction, I set myself already in a good position to set this bar. And there are a bit of rules to set these bars. So they don't have to be positioned too low, something like this. It will not come a nice denture this way. It might gonna get a bit distorted. Or put this bar too close to the edges there. So the extraction says it's around 3 mm. If you close to 3 mm, it's fine. Don't be too worried about it. If it's 2.7, 2.8, it's actually a good result. And not always, unfortunately, we can achieve the measurements because you can see for this case as well, as I'm now engaging the palate, the denture base is quite small. Sometimes I've got even smaller denture base, so I kind of have to play around and find the right balance. Then be sure to scale it and don't let it like penetrate the denture base. So always have a look if it's actually is going through, like in this case here, you can scale it up. Now, say for this segment, you can angle it a little bit if you think that is too close to the teeth margin. And then if you want to just like double check, you can use the measuring tape and check what is the distance from the teeth. This is 3.2, 3.1 is not too bad. And here is 3.4, actually 3.5 nearly. So what I can do is incline a little bit and we're good to go. When you're ready, you apply it. Now, usually we set 2 T-bars for the upper and a T-bar and a bar for the lower. If you print with carbon, if you print with Asiga, it's 2 bars in the back for a lower. But for partial, there is not really much indication here, but it kind of intuitive after a while where you have to support the dentures. And this is an upper, but essentially I treat it as a lower. But I don't think there is a need to add an extra bar, so there is a space out only for a T-bar. But if it was a little bit more extended, let's pretend that was still here, I would probably then treat it exactly like a lower denture because it's a horseshoe shape. So I will add a bar at the back. Now we are ready to do the final check. If you can see teeth are going through, it's fine, don't panic. Next is coupling mechanism. So we are going to create our stock teeth. Let's preview it. It says that there is an intersection there, so you can skip it, but if you're really fussy like me, you can go back to the sculpt anatomy, grab the wax knife, and now we're gonna sculpt it a little bit. It doesn't have to be a much, even if you leave a little bit of space, it will work. So now I'm gonna do a little bit on the other side. And these happen every time. If the teeth are not connected, it will give you the error. So imagine you do only single units. It's gonna be a bit messy. But yeah, we have the space, which from the distance is not even visible, so it's not a big problem. And now I can jump back to the coupling mechanism and run the tool. Be sure always remove the denture base, because sometimes there is some spikes or something that is a bit dragged, and that will be a problem then when you print it. You go next, you do the next segment, and it looks quite alright. Let's have a look as well if, yeah, the teeth are being kept from the gingiva as well. And yeah, this is a nice denture now, ready to go. Next step, I will not change minimum thickness under the teeth and glue space, especially the glue space, because this comes from the manufacturing settings. That's why we always select the right material. And then next, that's all that is finished. And now, if we want to get our file, we go on Advanced, Generate CAM Output, and this will generate the file we just designed. Explore CAM, and here are STL. As we select monoblock at the beginning on the order form, software always gonna generate a nice monoblock that we can use for trying, and then single parts of denture base. How you can see, we got a nice socket all around, so it's gonna be really easy to find position for this teeth. And then we got our segments. And that's all for today. Thank you so much.